Thank you everyone for coming out. Can everybody hear me? Yes? I don't have a very loud voice, so I'll make sure to speak up. My name is Corey Miles, and I work here at the Northern Virginia Regional Commission as an environmental planner. And I started working on this project about 3 years ago with a very small steering committee group of people who wanted to address some of the issues associated with habitat loss and invasive species in Northern Virginia. So we came up with putting together a regional native plant campaign, and we got funding from the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program to start this campaign. So as time went on, we came up with a shared vision of promoting the use of native plants in the urban and suburban landscape. And we brought together a broad coalition of partners. We started with Jim McGlone, Virginia Department of Forestry. At
the back of the room.
At the back of the room. Alan Ford, Virginia Native Plant Society. Nancy Veers, Virginia Native Plant Society. Lily Whitesell, Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District. Some master gardeners, master naturalists.
Should we ask for hands while you're going through that? If you're a master naturalist,
Yeah.
raise your hand.
Oh,
Virginia Native Plant Society. Virginia Native Plant Society.
Shameless plug.
Master gardener. Master gardener.
Master gardeners. What about nonprofits? Anybody here with a nonprofit group?
friends of groups.
Audubon Society.
Oh, Audubon.
Okay. Great. So, anyways, we all partnered together under this shared vision, and we did a little bit of market research to determine how to go about implementing our shared vision, and we came up with 3 objectives. One, we really need to create consumer demand for native plants. 2, we also want to make it easy and fun for shoppers to purchase natives at the retail garden centers. And 3, we want to make sure that growers are providing enough plant material to meet the demand and make sure that there are enough species available, diversity of species available to purchase. We're using a concept called collective impact. And this concept is a very well-known, well-respected way of creating social change. And it brings together people in a structured way to collaborate and achieve social change under a collaborative agenda. So we have all these partners have a common agenda. We formed a steering committee. We have a backbone organization, which is our funders, which is the Coastal Zone Management Program at DEQ. And then within our steering committee and our members at large, we have several working groups, our partners, and then our community members, which is why we invited everybody here tonight. So the idea is that we're not all going in different directions in an isolated manner. We're collectively all following in the same direction. This is just a generalized supply chain schematic of what we're thinking is the supply for plant material. So it all starts with the growers, and then we move down to wholesale suppliers, retail garden centers, landscapers, and landowners. So we want to interact with each of these groups in a very positive way to help create change. To force social change, you often encounter resistance. So that is why we're bringing people on early in the process so that they can help to co-create the change. We want to build and maintain trust and consistency with their message in all segments of the market, and we want to match our words with action. And also, since people are creatures of habit, asking someone to change their behavior is something that makes them uncomfortable. So we just ask that you be patient with us through this process. It might take several repeated efforts to actually see a social change, but we want to make sure you're empowered to join this movement and do what you think you can do to contribute. So as we move through the program tonight, just keep thinking in the back of your mind about how you might be able to use your strengths, your networks, your opportunities, the people you know, the people you interact with, and help contribute to this campaign. And also, a very cliche quote, but very applicable to us: never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So, with that, I'm going to pass it off to Lily Whitesell.
So I'm going to talk briefly about some of the lessons that we can draw, not only from the collective impact model, but also from the social marketing and the advocacy sort of ways of thinking about the world. Basically, both of these, collective impact is sort of the broader context under which we're acting, and social marketing and advocacy both have some specific tools that we can use to make sure that we're being strategic as we go out there. And also, hi everybody. It's nice to see you all. It's nice to see some familiar faces here tonight as well. Again, I work for the Northern Virginia Soil. We have a garden tour. We'd love to feature your native plant gardens, Ruston, Herndon, this upcoming year. My shameless plug. So when we're talking about advocacy and social marketing, when we're talking about first advocacy background, anytime you're doing advocacy, you want to make sure that you're always being strategic. And the way that you can make sure that you're being strategic is by focusing on 4 key questions. Those are, who's my target audience? What's my objective? What do I want my target audience to do? Number 3, what's my message? You want to know what message is most likely going to be effective with your target audience. And number 4, how can I be, or who is an effective messenger, or how can I be an effective messenger for this? Then with social marketing, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each of these, but I want to give you the overall picture. Then when we bring in some of the social marketing tools, now social marketing, I'm not talking about Facebook. This is a different effort that's really based on using marketing tools to create a social good. Very similar to the collective impact type of model that Corey was talking about just now. But social marketing is based on a couple of very key items. One of them is that you need to listen to your target audience. So these kind of really combine together nicely here. You want to listen to your target audience to identify barriers and benefits. So you want to help your target audience overcome perceived and real barriers that they might have to planting native plants, right? And you want to emphasize, or selling native plants, or what have you, you want to emphasize the benefits of taking the desired action for them. How is it going to benefit that person? Again, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each of these, but this is kind of the overall slide here. That's the big picture. So again, here are these strategic questions and answers. One other point I want to make is that when you're deciding what your objectives are, make sure that it's big enough to matter, but small enough to be achievable. And we can talk about being achievable. In our native plant campaign, one of our big objectives is that we really want Northern Virginia homeowners to purchase and plant native plants. And I think Corey had a really nice slide with those 3, kind of divided into 3 subsections of how we're going to do that, by attacking the growers, by attacking at the folks, at the vendors, the garden centers, and all of those different places. So again, so our primary audience is Northern Virginia homeowners. Our secondary audience here is that we want garden centers. I don't know if you can see with this line in the middle, but we want garden centers to sell, label, and promote native plants, right? These are the 3 asks that we're making of our garden centers. And then we're also going to be working with other audiences, influencers, people who can, influence our homeowners and maybe even influence our garden centers. So that HOAs, homeowners associations, places of worship, businesses, schools. We know there are a lot of native plant gardens at schools, and we love working with schools. Local government, growers, and for all of these different audiences, we want folks to plant plant native plants, educate their member audiences or residents or folks that they are in their realms about why native plants are great for them. We want them, of course, to maintain their native plant gardens. That can sometimes be tricky, especially here in schools, and change their policies to incorporate native plants more broadly into what they're doing. Again, when you're talking about messages, there are a lot of different ways that you can frame a message. And since we're kind of in this political season right now where there's a lot of messages that sometimes we roll our eyes at, but we also want to take those lessons and use them for our own campaign. We want to think about why, if I'm talking to my intended audience, if I'm talking to somebody who I want to reach or I want to do something, we want to talk about why it's good practice generally, but also why it's in their self-interest. Not about why you think it's a good idea, but why it might be good for them. A lot of times we get caught up in this third point of sort of why it's the right thing to do, and we really need to focus our efforts more on the top two kinds of messages. So these are some of the key messages of this native plant campaign that we've developed. We actually did a survey of residents here across Northern Virginia, so people who are here, homeowners who are making decisions about the plants that they're putting in their landscape. One of the messages that we tested was sort of the native plants are beautiful, and you'll see that on the native Plant Nova Natives logo, naturally beautiful, right? Native plants are easy to care for, that they actually require less fertilizer and watering maybe once they are established and when they are planted in the right place. And native plants, of course, this is the key one, right? Native plants benefit birds, butterflies, and pollinators. That's one of the big reasons why we are all in this room today, for sure. So who are our good messengers in order to do this? Well, one of the key lessons from social marketing, this sort of idea that you want to create a common good using some of the typical tools of marketing, is that actually if you want to affect behavior change, which is what we're looking to do here, we're trying to overcome habits, entrenched habits and create new habits with people, is that when you have one-on-one personal contact, you're actually going to get a much higher behavior change rate. So this chart here has behavior change on this axis and reach on this axis. So of course, when you have one-on-one personal contact, the reach is really low. You're just talking to one person. But the return in behavior change is much, much higher. It may not be 100%, but it's going to be a lot better. As you get down here to group discussion, personalized media, impersonal direct contact, so direct mail, and then like billboards, TV and radio ads and things like that, you may reach a lot more people, but you're going to get a lot less behavior change. So that's, again, one of the reasons why it's so critical. Even though we have this really strong partnership, this really strong coalition of groups, it's really essential that we reach out beyond just sort of the key people in this steering committee and engage all of you, of course, to help reach out to your communities and beyond. So, if you guys are all going to be messengers for Plant Nova Natives, what are some of the key things that you need to have? So again, this focus on behavior change and listening and overcoming obstacles and emphasizing benefits is really the way to do that. I'm going to kind of skip through this, but one of the key take-homes from this slide is really that it's important to build trust with the person who's in front of you. Even if that's a garden center person, employee who's selling English ivy. I know, it's hard sometimes. Or neonicotinoid pesticides or whatever else. It's about building trust between you and having them seeing you as a trustworthy person. All right, so with a background in some advocacy, in one-on-one advocacy, lobbying is very similar to one-on-one personal interaction in this way. There are some really essential key points that are really important to keep in mind. And a lot of people do them just by habit. when you are learning or know how to affect change in the workplace or in your personal life or whatever else, a lot of times people already are using these things. But it's important to spell them out just so that you can always have them in your mind when you're doing these things. So number one, how do you be a great messenger is to practice. And you'll notice in your folder, if you've rifled through, that there are some practice role plays for you. I know everybody loves role plays, but I would really encourage you to try them out and use them, practice with them, and have fun with them. I mean, we all know what some of the common concerns people may have about native plants are. But is there a way for you to, if you look at the back, you'll see there's kind of an overcoming obstacles side of the page. But collectively, we can come up with what are the great ways to counter certain arguments that might actually be likely to convince somebody and build that trust as well. Eye contact, it's really important when you're making an ask to make eye contact with whoever you're talking with, whether it's an HOA representative or a garden center employee, whoever you may be trying to convince. Use the guide is the next point. So actually, do you mind if I ask somebody to bring up a guide real quick? So if I'm trying to convince someone that native plants are a great thing and they should plant them, the first thing that I'm going to try and do is give them the guide and let them go ahead and take a look through it. Take a couple steps back, so they can't put back in your hand. And really start to engage them in a way that, hey, oh yeah, you see that one? That's a butterfly flower, beautiful plant, really gorgeous in June, July. So it really, it can take the conversation to the next level, and it's actually a really good tool for establishing that trust as well. If they have a gorgeous guide in front of them, it'll sort of do the work for you. Keep it short and simple. KISS. There's a lot of versions of this. KISS. This is the one I like. But respecting people's time and getting straight to the point if it seems that they're in a rush is one thing that's really important. And also, don't forget to make the ask, right? That's a common thing that if you're nervous about doing it, sometimes you'll forget to kind of get to that point, make that ask or the ask might get fumbled. You might sort of, what was I going to be asking of them? Or they're looking like they might not be receptive. Maybe I should just go away, before I make the ask. Make the ask. There's nothing you can lose. They can always say no, but they could also say yes. Some sort of advanced skills when you're working with people. Watch people, listen. Personally, I like to match tones with people, so if somebody comes up and they're really intense, and you sort of get up a little bit more and make myself a little bit bigger as much as I can. No. But if somebody's more reserved and quiet, you also want to match that tone and not be too over the top, or else you're going to come across as overbearing. So, make it easy for them to do the right thing. You're going to help them troubleshoot. Maybe one way of getting around that is by, always be sort of thinking like, oh, what they have to say, they have a valid concern. They're not just trying to push me off. They have a valid concern. How could I address that concern? And what ways could we use? And the answer maybe you don't know yet. But sort of having that attitude of be happy to work with you on that and help figure out some way for us to work together on this. And that probably will be especially true with the garden center. Responding, of course, when you respond to a concern, it's always important to listen, acknowledge that concern. This goes together with my last point as well. You want to address those concerns, but also reiterate the benefits. This is everybody's favorite, right? We're not trying to get into arguments here. You can certainly respond thoughtfully to what somebody says, but if they're trying to kick you out of the store, you can take that. And that also, again, goes with the final point here. Set reasonable expectations. So set reasonable expectations. We're not going to convince everybody. We're not going to get every single person in your homeowners association to have, to get rid of all of their lawn and plant 100% native plants, right? We may not, we probably can't even achieve that in our own yards. So do set those reasonable expectations. Don't get discouraged when somebody tells you no, it's going to happen. That's why, if you go back to the graph a couple slides away, it doesn't go up to 100% at one-on-one personal contact. It may go up to 50% if you're lucky, but still that's a great percentage rate. And even if you get 4 no's in a row, you will eventually get to that yes. So that's my last bit, and now I'd like to invite up Alan Ford to discuss in a little bit more detail and answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Lily. I appreciate you coming out tonight and joining us. We've been working, and we know there's a lot more work to be done, and so we're here to ask you to help us get some of that work done. We may have reached about 10,000 property owners up until this point, and we've set ourselves a goal of 100,000 property owners in 5 years. So we have some work ahead of us to reach that goal, and as Lily was pointing out, scope of influence is going to be critical. For example, the Audubon at Home program is a very dynamic one-on-one outreach example. We've accomplished maybe 1,000 contacts over the 5 or so years that program's been active. We would like to have 10,000, but we don't have all the people that we need to make that task accomplished. So one of the challenges is for us to spread our scope, to increase our reach, and figure out ways that we can accomplish that task. And as Corey pointed out, we are comfortable now, I think, as a group, with how to reach the consumer. And the models that we've been working on, you have some materials in your brochures, simple handouts that might work with a homeowner. You may not want to look at the whole guide, but you're willing to look at 5 pretty sunny plants. So that model, I think we're pretty comfortable with. We need more exposure. But we also now know that there is an opportunity with homeowners associations and faith organizations and companies who are property owners who may have larger property under control, and we want to be able to reach them as well. So one of the things that we're asking of you is to take the time today and in the next week and think about all of the people to whom you could pass this message. Are there some HOAs? Have you a friend in your swim club who you know who might be willing to invite you to the board of the swim club to talk about what they could do on their property? So these are part of the outreach to the public. But we have run into an interesting dynamic. We knew we were going to get to it. We were a little bit surprised how quickly we got to it. We're now talking to the garden centers and saying, here's our guide. We're talking this up. The people are going to come asking. And the garden centers look at us and say, we can't get native plants. Now, they do have some native plants. They do have plants that they identify as native, and that's fine, and we're supportive of that. But what they're saying is that when somebody comes and asks for a specific species, they're not able to find somebody who grows it for sale. So we knew that this might occur, so we've been starting to talk to the growers. And the growers say, we're not going to grow it unless we're asked for it, because they have a commitment in time and resources and lead time. It takes 3 years or so for them to go from we know this is a need to we have something that we can sell in volume. And so we're now in an interesting situation where we need to bring both of those sides of the situation improve both of those aspects of it. So we're talking to the garden centers, we're letting them know that the demand is going to be coming, we expect it to increase. We're talking to the growers, saying, how can you prepare for this? What can we do to help you prepare? So that's where we generally are. Some of the things, to reiterate some of the things that Lily was talking about, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We know that there are many issues here that people have in the back of their mind. Native plants are messy. Native plants are hard to find. We know these kinds of questions are out there. And so we're asking, encouraging that you always recognize that we're focusing on a positive message. We don't want everybody to convert their entire property to native plants. We don't want you ripping out your trees that you may love. We would like to see every homeowner plant one native plant, consciously, for a reason. So a good example, columbine. Talk to a homeowner about columbine and say, this plant may be associated with the northern migration of the hummingbird. So if you like hummingbirds and you want them to come to visit your property, plant the native columbine. So if we can get one step through the door, that I think is where we need to make our first inroads. The other point was, we're not here to win battles, and I'm sure many of you have concerns and have heard about things such as cultivars and selections, and what's the story with cultivars and selections. And we went around on this, and our decision is, as a campaign, that we're not going to argue that argument. So if somebody wants to plant a cultivar or a selection, that's fine, because at least they're conscious that they're planting a native plant. Even if it might not be pristine or ideal, it still is positive. The columbine is another good example of this. The columbine has been highly selected and bred, and so we get the Biedermann's double and all of these really fancy varieties. We don't know how the wildlife is going to react to these plants. Some of this research is being done. Doug Tallamy is just now beginning to report out some research on the insectivory on cultivars and selections. So we should have more data to bolster our arguments in the near future. But if somebody really loves that Biedermann's double columbine, fine. Encourage them to find a corner of their property that they could plant the species, straight species, because we're pretty sure that the hummingbird doesn't recognize the Biedermann's double. And so this would be another example. Neonicotinoids is another example. Most people I'm hearing from now are recognizing that there is a concern here. They may still have in their supply chain somebody who is using that in the growing process. But more and more people are starting to pay attention to it. If somebody confronts you on that issue, we're not ready to argue that point, because this is a bigger message. We want people looking out of their yard and seeing a native plant and recognizing it and appreciating it. So if we can get them to plant a redbud tree in their yard, that would be an example of success. Are there any questions or observations, thoughts?
Just wondering, I looked at the material a little bit. The connection with the deer issue is not really explicit here.
Correct.
But it seems to me that's something that nurseries might be asked all the time. People might come in and say, how do I get something that the deer won't eat?
Yeah. And it's a really unfortunate problem, because the deer have co-evolved with the native plants. So the native plants are exactly what they're looking for when it comes to
But
snacks.
that's not true totally.
Well, there are many native plants that have some advantages versus deer. Anything in the mint family, anything that is spicy. Spice bush is an example of a plant that they will only eat in desperation. American holly is a plant they will only eat in
Well,
desperation.
you can't buy a spice bush at a nursery, I don't think, I've never asked.
Well, that is an example of exactly the problem that we're trying to address. Because in our guide, one of the plants we recommend is spice bush. It's an example of a great plant insect association. The spice bush swallowtail does not exist without the spice
I
bush.
understand, there's also a connection with deer, and the perceived problem many people have, that the deer are eating a lot of their other things, like
Right.
hostas and so on.
Correct.
And so when they go to the nurseries and say, what can we do about this deer problem we have? One answer is that they can say, I hear this spice bush that the deer don't eat.
Right.
I don't think the deer around here eat spice bush.
Yes,
I
they
mean,
do.
there's so much,
The truth is that when the deer are hungry, they will eat everything.
there's a lot of spice bush out there in the forest.
Pawpaw is another example. I don't see much damage on pawpaw, but if it's bad, they'll eat the pawpaw too. So your point's well taken, and this is a classic example of the challenge that we face. One of the things that we're working on now is to take the list that we developed as a consumer-oriented guide and try to refine that as a grower-seller-oriented guide, and maybe sub-select from that list targeted plants that we are hopeful have a better chance of survival in the suburban yard. Group them, organize them, give more information to the growers and sellers on how they can make some choices.
You know,
That was designed as a marketing tool for the
I'm
public.
just saying, do something like this that has deer on the front cover too. It has, want to do something about your deer? Here's 5 easy plants.
That is a good example of, thank you, we will do that.
Okay.
Please.
I belong to the garden club in the community,
Yes.
but just I noticed that we have not got any these kind of seminar or anything. We call other nursery people or the lectures, and then there are a lot of garden clubs around this area, and I really think you should approach this garden club because these people are more like the expert or something for the community, and then we just other people come to garden club members and they ask these things because supposedly their gardens are better than others. It's not the case all the time, but yeah, that's excellent. That kind of thing. Why that you don't put that in the agenda for that?
We do have that as one of our goals, and we have, if you will, a speakers bureau, people who feel comfortable talking to a garden club. What we don't have is the request from the garden club. So one of the things we're asking, if you know of garden clubs or community events where there may be 5 minutes or 15 minutes for one of us to make a pitch, we would be eager to make that pitch. But we need to know that they are ready and they're willing to invite us.
And let me just jump in here one quick. We have given presentations to some garden clubs, as part of the member organizations. Nancy's like, oh yeah, I give them a ton, all the time. But one of the things that we'd like to do is to reach out to additional garden clubs and things like that. That's one of the things that we'll be brainstorming in the breakout sessions. So start writing them down on that little volunteer information form. I think we have time for a couple more questions, though.
I also wanted to tell you about the materials that we've been developing that are available to you to help you in this process. On our website, plantnovanatives.org, is a link to our Google Drive where we have toolkit materials. These are all materials that have been developed by our committee. They include the materials that are in your brochure. And these are all the kinds of materials that you're welcome to grab if you want to make a copy, if you're going to your community center and you want to stick a couple brochures in the stand out front, then here is access to all of the resources. If there's something that you think we should be doing and you can't find it there, tell us. We don't have all the answers. We just know we need to do the work. So if you have other ideas, please, Marilyn.
When you talk about places that you would partner with, the parks often have like brochures. Do we have natives things already in the park, like at the various nature centers and stuff?
That's a great idea to have Plant Nova Natives brochures there. They do have native plant materials that they've produced, but that's a great idea.
Green Spring Garden just contacted me. They want to be able to sell this guide. So
That's true.
this is another thing that you need to understand. The guide has been funded independently of the rest of the campaign. And the reason we did this is because the grant we have is a wonderful resource that's helping us make this push, but we have no guarantee, as much as we have hope, that we will get that grant next year. The guide, however, is self-sustaining. We are able to print the guide based on the money we get for selling the guide, and we're not selling it for profit. So if you know of a person who wants a single guide, we ask $5 of a single guide. If you know of a place that's willing to sell the guides, we'll sell the guides at $3 per by box. So we're interested in making sure the guides are out there to whomever is willing to make that commitment to advertise and sell the guide. And we're fine with them charging $5 per to the public so they get an incentive to encourage the guide. Nancy?
I just want to make sure everyone knows that the guide is available on the Virginia Native Plant Society website. We sell it for $8.50, which includes the mailing, so people can buy guides online now.
It's also available for free download. So.
Yes, the PDF is here
Yeah.
as
So
well.
if you need to.
So you're welcome to download it.
Have to consider realty companies.
Very good point, and the answer is yes.
Repeat the question or state.
Realty, we've had a very successful outreach to one realtor,
I had one that I sold a bunch to.
two realtors. The interesting thing about realtors, if you know one, it's a good contact because they are required by their profession to do service training. And so they have weekly meetings. Every single realtor office has regular meetings which provide this ongoing training resource. And having one of us come and give a 15-minute spiel is a perfectly good resource for them to use. So realtors is an excellent example. We also recognize that that's a positive market, that the realtors can buy the guides and give them out as incentives for people who are interested in buying houses.
And having done this presentation, I would just add that, a good line for this is how you can distinguish yourself in your own practice, through your encouragement of this kind of ecologically sensitive value.
People like going green.
I noticed the signs back here, they look like the art signs.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
available
Yes.
for people to?
What we've done, thanks to Margaret and some of the hard work she's done, we have partnered with two different online resource organizations, one of which is signs.com,
Yes.
which if you go to signs.com and put in Plant Nova Natives, you get to our page on their site, and all of our materials can be printed, we have 3 or 4 models, can be printed on whatever medium you want. So they have
Please go to the link from Plant Nova Natives.
hard, it's also there too. You could get it as a hard metal sign if you want, or this corrugated plastic sign. We've also teamed up with a Cafe Press. Margaret is modeling several of the items that are available. This is another example. Cafe Press will put logos on just about anything. And once again, both of these sites, we are not charging for profit. So the cost for any of the resources at any of these sites is the actual production cost plus shipping. So we're not trying to generate money through these. We want this information into the public.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but to continue on your topic of signs, I just recently, my son has a farm down on the Eastern Shore, and he has permitted me to do some landscaping. And he has permitted me to use native plants, which I am thrilled. But I'm thinking in terms of, so he has customers that come to the farm, that it would be good PR for him to be able to have a sign for each of the native plants. I've gone searching for them, and they do exist, they're pretty expensive. But I'm wondering if that might be something that the organization could help with.
That's a wonderful idea. We have the data in our guide, and it would not be too difficult for us to transform that into a signable thing. Getting that done is going to take some time.
Some of
There is a
our,
company that does kind of stick and model.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we might be able to do something. Before you go, there is a Eastern Shore native plant campaign. So before you go any farther with your son's property from Northern Virginia plants, there's a campaign. We're the fourth of these campaigns.
We're the third.
Sorry, third of these campaigns developed through the coastal zone, Eastern Shore, Northern Neck, and then us. So they have a targeted list, a more appropriate targeted list for the Eastern Shore.
I would just say that some of our partners have created some sort of laminatable signs that are not, ideal in all weather conditions, but certainly if there were like a special day at the farm or things like that, might be possible to do that. And some of those are available, I believe, here. Mary Van Dyke is the contact.
I was gonna say, is that material, is the Mary Van Dyke's information about using a plasticized printable?
I believe this is what she
Okay.
had created.
That was actually created, I think, by Native Plant
Those
Society.
are Donna
Was this
Murphy's
Native
work.
Society? Oh.
Yeah, we discovered a
Sorry.
material that you can print on with a regular laser printer. It's offered by a company, gardenware.com, and it's propylene, polypropylene is what it is. And it's supposed to be not bad for the environment as well, but it's weatherproof. And I've developed some signs for the Virginia Native Plant Society. We have about 150 with, scientific name, common name, and growing habits and all of that.
They're right there?
Yeah.
Those are there?
Oh, that's one.
That's what this is. So
So
we'll,
I apologize for.
maybe, do we have a folder called signage?
Yes.
Okay.
Called sign.
Okay,
PNN species sign.
okay.
What we can do
Signs.
though, and what we probably need some help with, is getting substantially all of the plants in our guide transformed into this format, so that then it's very easy for you to pull down and print what you want.
I can't see from here in terms of what information is there, but from my experience, I think it would be useful in terms of a sales pitch to be able to say this plant, as you were saying, for the type of oil is related.
Yeah.
If more of that information was available.
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, on many of these, we do have that data, and just to give you some advance notice, we are beginning the process of developing our 3rd edition of the guide. And that will be occurring over the winter time. We have a large number of 2nd edition guides printed, so we don't anticipate having to reprint guides until after next spring. But this is the kind of information that we want to increase the value of the guide by providing more of those details, more of those hooks, more of those ways for people to say yes, which is what the real challenge is. Did you have a question?
I did. I first of all just wanted to say how amazing and fantastic this is and commend you and give all of you staff a round of applause. Fantastic. And I have 2 questions. Okay. So for speaking to groups, do you have the spiel as part of the
In your booklet
materials?
is a basic content speech, and
Thank
it
you.
runs on about 10 minutes or so.
Second question?
What, plus there's a PowerPoint.
Oh,
Yes.
There's a PowerPoint that's available, so you don't have to put together your own pretty little slides.
my second question is for the garden centers and, well, I guess even more broadly. What do you want us to say about invasives?
Very good question. Once again, this is all about a positive message, so we don't engage on that question. We only say, here is a native plant, please plant this. Now, you and I know that this is a major problem here, and there are other strong-willed people who are carrying that water. So if you are wearing the Plant Nova Natives hat, we're positive message, plant a native plant today. If you want to flip over to your Virginia Native Plant Society hat, you can get right up in their face about selling English ivy.
Probably not in the same conversation. Right.
Thank you.
But you could say, this is a lovely alternative to.
In fact, that's true. It raises a challenge. This is apocryphal, and it's probably 10 years old now. But I understand that Benke, the owner of Benke's Nurseries, once said that 10% of his profits came from English ivy.
No, that's American. Bankies doesn't sell.
No, this was
Benke's did.
10 years ago. And what he was saying is, what he was communicating is, profit. It is money to sell these plants because landscapers come in and buy flats and flats and flats of these plants and plant them wherever they're planting. And that's the other hook, just so you know. We recognize that getting to landscapers, designers, installers, and maintainers is a very big part of our challenge.
One more question, on reporting, you said there was 1,000, you want 100,000, 10,000, or whatever. How is that data being collected?
We are working through many channels. We count the number of hits that our website gets. We count the number of engagements that we do individually. If you go out to an HOA and speak to 15 people, you report back, that counts as 15 contacts.
On the Spread the Word page on the Plant Nova Natives website, there's a great place you can, number one, take the native plant, Northern Virginia Native Plant Pledge, and then down at the bottom, there's a great way to report back about events or specific conversations. Probably be using that events link more.